There is a strange paradox in our modern world. The more choices we have, the more empty we seem to feel. Supermarkets overflow with goods, social media dazzles us with images of luxury vacations, fine dining, and elegant homes. Yet when night falls, countless people lie awake, restless, unsettled, and unable to name the source of their unease. There are mornings when you wake up, look into the mirror, and quietly wonder, I already have so much, so why don't I feel happy? It's a question that echoes silently in many hearts, though few dare to speak it aloud. Society has taught us that success and happiness should always go hand in hand. But reality often tells another story. A wealthy businessman in New York, fresh from signing a multi-million-dollar deal, drives his luxury car down Fifth Avenue, yet spends his evenings in therapy, battling depression. In a small village in India, a farmer with calloused hands and a humble home laughs heartily. World applauds or turns away. It is an inner state, a quiet current of being, revealed only when we are deeply connected to ourselves. And yet, why is this truth so elusive? Because we are easily deceived by illusions. We tell ourselves that happiness will arrive when we own more, climb higher, reach farther. We imagine that if our suffering disappears, happiness will naturally appear. But the Buddha's timeless words remind us, happiness is not the absence of suffering. It is the understanding of suffering and the freedom that arises from it. In this video, we will journey through, waiting for us to recognize it. You will meet a merchant who lost everything yet found peace in the ruins of failure. You will hear of a Western monk who abandoned the glitter of fame to embrace simplicity. You will witness lives that seemed marked by misfortune, yet reveal the deepest lessons of inner joy. And in each story, you may discover a reflection of your own. If you have ever thought that happiness is a destination waiting somewhere ahead, then perhaps today's journey will change that belief. Because these stories are not only meant to be heard, they are meant to remind. People have never stopped searching for happiness. We have built great cities, invented advanced technologies, and dreamed of a future filled with wealth and comfort. Yet, amid all the conveniences of modern life, an undeniable paradox remains. The more material abundance people have, the less true peace they often feel. How many times have we believed that happiness would arrive once we achieved something, a new job, a bigger paycheck, a perfect relationship? And yet, when we finally grasp it, the joy often vanishes as quickly as a passing breeze, leaving behind another emptiness. It is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. And so, the search continues without end. Long ago, wise teachers, and especially the Buddha, pointed to stories of real people with real joys and sorrows, with losses and discoveries. These stories remind us that the path back to inner peace is not reserved only for monks or sages, but is open to all of us, right in the midst of our busy daily lives. Some stories will come from the East, others from the West. Some from those who seem to have lost everything, yet found unshakable peace. All of them share the same message. Inner happiness is a light that never goes out, waiting only for us to pause and recognize it. So let us begin this journey, listening to stories both simple and profound, and gently ask ourselves, where does true happiness lie? And have we perhaps been overlooking it in this very moment? Part 1. Beginning. Questions about happiness. Before we enter the stories and customs, yet few can deny the wish to live in peace and love. Happiness, therefore, becomes the common denominator of humanity. Happiness has been imagined in countless ways. For the poor, it may be as simple as a daily meal and a roof that shelters from the rain. For the wealthy, happiness is measured by possessions, luxurious travels, or the ability to own what others cannot. For the young, it is freedom, adventure, and self-expression. For the elderly, it is health and the warmth of family gatherings. The definitions vary, but at their core, they all point to the same: desire, contentment, and peace of mind. We often think of happiness as a destination, a milestone to be conquered. A child longs to grow up for freedom. An adult longs for success and recognition. And in old age, one longs for serenity and simplicity. This endless chain keeps us running forward, believing happiness lies in some distant tomorrow. Yet when tomorrow arrives, another tomorrow beckons. And so, the pursuit of happiness becomes a never-ending journey, while we often fail to realize it has always been present here and now. Across cultures, happiness has been sanctified to measure it, seeking formulas for well-being. Some nations have even created a gross national happiness index as a benchmark of prosperity. Yet no matter the method, the findings converge. Happiness depends less on material wealth than on the state of the mind. One may live in towering skyscrapers, yet feel empty inside. Another may live simply, yet radiate inner peace. In the Buddha's teaching, happiness is not seen as an external gift, but as an energy already dwelling within us. The Buddha once said, "A peaceful mind is the source of happiness." A simple statement, yet one that opens a profound doorway. If happiness lies within, then seeking it outside only leads us astray. By tending to our own minds, happiness naturally reveals itself. Yet modern society seems to run counter to this wisdom. The world glorifies competition, fuels ambition, and turns happiness into a commodity. Advertisements promise that joy comes with this car, that service, or a new house. And caught in this whirlwind, we believe happiness is just one purchase, one achievement, one victory away. But soon enough, that joy fades, leaving a deeper emptiness behind. Thus, the longing for happiness, seemingly ordinary, becomes one of humanity's greatest dilemmas. We all yearn for it, yet few know the right path. It is like being thirsty while standing by a river, but still searching for a well. Happiness is right beside us, but our eyes keep looking far away. This explains why, despite progress and abundance, rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness continue to rise worldwide. Material wealth can fill a house, but not the heart. Only inner stability can erase the invisible void many carry. Each story in this part will reveal more. The real question is not whether we desire it, but where we direct that flame. When we turn inward to illuminate our own hearts, we will see that happiness has never left us. It simply waits for us to awaken and notice. And from the very first story onward, may this journey serve as a gentle reminder. Happiness has never been out of reach. 1.2. The Great Misconception, when happiness is equated. Proof of a complete and meaningful life. Many believe that once they achieve one of these, happiness will naturally follow. Yet history and daily life reveal the opposite truth. Happiness is not they burst. Many people, after finally holding everything they once dreamed of, still feel an emptiness inside, as though a shadow lingers in their hearts that nothing external can fill. Fame is another powerful illusion. We all enjoy praise, admiration, and being the center of attention. To the public eye, celebrities seem to lead enviably happy lives. Yet when the stage lights dim and the applause fades, many confess to a profound loneliness. Trapped by the image others expect of them, they no longer live as their authentic selves. The very recognition they sought becomes invisible chains, binding them with pressure and unease. Power is perhaps the most seductive misconception. Many think that having the ability to command others will secure their happiness. But power is often accompanied by fear of losing it, by suspicion and endless struggle. The higher one climbs, the more precarious the ground beneath. History is filled with kings and rulers who, despite their absolute authority, ended their days in isolation, fear, and regret. The Buddha taught that wealth, fame, and power are all impermanent. They can vanish at any time, and when people base their happiness on such unstable things, suffering is inevitable. Satisfaction gained from riches, compliments, or status is like eating a delicious meal, pleasurable for a while. But soon hunger returns. The more we crave, the greater our suffering, for desire never feels complete. This misconception is not only personal, but deeply ingrained in culture. From childhood, many are taught to study hard for a good job, to succeed for respect, to become rich to be considered somebody. Such standards make happiness seem like a prize for winners only. Yet countless so-called failures in society have found genuine peace, while those celebrated as successful remain restless. Looking deeper, we see this misunderstanding rooted in comparison and greed. When others have more wealth, fame, or power, we feel inferior. When we surpass others, we become arrogant and fearful of losing our position. This cycle prevents us from ever pausing to enjoy happiness in the present moment. Buddhist scriptures recount many encounters with the wealthy and the powerful. Kings who lived in golden palaces confided in the Buddha that they never truly felt secure. Merchants with fortunes beyond measure sought his guidance to overcome inner emptiness. These stories remind us that happiness cannot be purchased with gold or titles. Buddhism emphasizes that true happiness lies in the calmness of mind. When the mind is free from greed, anger, and delusion, when we know contentment with what we already have, happiness naturally arises. A poor person may still smile with gratitude and love. Someone unknown to the world may still be happy living authentically. One without power may feel freer, unburdened by control or domination. Modern life offers many examples. There are billionaires who, despite having everything others covet, end their lives in despair. And there are ordinary people, even those living in hardship, whose serenity inspires everyone around them. This proves that happiness depends not on circumstance, but on how we perceive and live with ourselves. The belief that happiness equals wealth, fame, or power is one of humanity's greatest traps. As long as we chase it, we will feel lacking and incomplete. Only when we awaken to the truth that happiness does not come from outside can we stop running and begin the journey inward. This is the doorway the Buddha opened, to return to the mind itself, where the treasure of happiness has never been lost. From this recognition, we move forward into the stories that follow, lives of both hardship and privilege, each revealing the same timeless truth. Happiness does not reside in position or possessions, but in the ability to let go, to feel content, and to cultivate peace in every moment of life. 1.3. Buddhism and the essential question: what is true happiness? Among the world's philosophies and religions, few place as much emphasis on the nature of suffering and happiness as Buddhism. Siddhartha Gautama, after years of ascetic practices, realized that neither extreme deprivation nor endless indulgence could bring liberation. From that insight arose a timeless question, one that still echoes through humanity today: what is true happiness? This question was not abstract speculation, but the fruit of lived experience. The Buddha was born into wealth and privilege, with everything a person could desire. Yet he saw that riches, status, and power could not shield anyone from aging, illness, and death. Confronted with this truth, he left the palace in search of answers. Under the Bodhi tree, upon awakening, he understood that true happiness is not found outside but within the awakened, peaceful mind. What makes Buddhism unique is that it does not impose a rigid definition of happiness. Instead, it invites each person to look deeply into the roots of suffering and, from that understanding, discover the path to peace. Through the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha taught, life is marked by suffering. Suffering has a cause, suffering can end, and the path to its end. A person in prison may still smile if they know forgiveness and compassion. Another with the whole world in their hands may still be miserable if their mind is restless and fearful. Happiness, in Buddhism, is the serenity of fully touching reality. Drinking tea with awareness of its warmth, watching a sunrise with a quiet heart. These simple acts reveal happiness. It is near, intimate, always present, yet often forgotten as we chase distant illusions. In many discourses, the Buddha emphasized that happiness does not come from avoiding suffering, but from understanding it. Like a thorn in the foot, only by facing it directly and removing it can the pain subside. Similarly, by looking deeply into suffering's causes, we can move beyond it to find authentic joy. Mindfulness is the key that opens this door. Breathing in and knowing you are breathing in, breathing out and knowing you are breathing out. This simple awareness brings us back to the present. Freed from the grip of past regrets and future anxieties, we discover a deep and quiet happiness right here and now. Buddhism also teaches that happiness is never selfish. One cannot be truly happy while causing harm to others. Our lives are interwoven, and to create suffering is to plant unrest in our own hearts. Conversely, when we sow love and compassion, we ourselves taste peace. Thus, Compassion is the very foundation of Buddhist happiness. Another central teaching is that happiness does not require conditions. We often say, "If only I had this, I would be happy." But Buddhism teaches that happiness is not if or when, it is now. When we stop depending on external conditions, we realize happiness is already in every breath, every step, every smile. The question, what is true happiness, remains as urgent today as ever. In a restless world filled with distractions, responsibilities, and self-loss, the Buddha's teaching rings like a bell of awakening. It reminds us that happiness is not far away, but right here, waiting for us to pause and look within. When Buddhism re-asks the question of happiness, it does not give a fixed definition, but offers a path. That path begins with mindfulness, continues with insight, and flowers in compassion. Walking this path, each person can find happiness not through possessions, but through inner peace. From this foundation, we move into the stories ahead, where each life, each journey, reflects the same truth. True happiness is never far, for it resides in the heart of every human being. Part 2. The illusion of happiness through material wealth. On the journey to seek happiness, many people turn outward. They believe that wealth, status, or power is the key to lasting joy. On a business trip to India, Alexander happened upon a small temple in the old quarter. He hadn't intended to seek peace. He merely wanted to escape the oppressive heat outside. Yet when he sat on the worn bamboo mat and heard the temple bell resound through the air, his heart grew still. He saw poor villagers coming to pray, their clothes simple, their faces weathered, but their eyes shining into Alexander's soul. That night, back at his hotel, he tossed and turned. For the first time in years, he felt deeply unsettled, not because of business or competitors, but because of his own life. The next day, he returned to the small temple. Sitting silently for hours, Alexander realized he had never learned to slow down, never once given his mind a moment's rest. He had been chasing a dream of happiness rooted in material possessions, and in doing so, had sacrificed his inner peace. Alexander's story is far from unique. In every city across the globe, we find people just like him. Glamorous on the outside, hollow within. They believe money, fame, and power are the keys to happiness, but the more they chase, the more they lose themselves in an endless maze. Buddhism teaches that happiness cannot be bought, nor can it be tied to anything external. Wealth can buy a grand house, but not the warmth of family. Fame can bring respect, but not genuine trust. Power can make others bow, but it cannot open their hearts. Alexander's journey of self-discovery may be long or brief, but the turning point began the moment he admitted he was not happy, despite having everything. That is the lesson his story offers us. Wealth can bring comfort, but without inner peace, happiness will always remain out of reach. This story lingers like a quiet reminder. In our modern lives, we may be busy, successful, or admired, but we must ask ourselves, are we truly happy? If the answer is silence, perhaps it is time to pause, look within, and seek the kind of happiness that material wealth can never provide. 2.2. Desire is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The image of Alexander, a man who had everything yet remained unhappy, reflects a profound truth in Buddhist philosophy. Human desire is like salt water in the ocean. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. The more we crave, the emptier we feel. This truth seems simple, yet it is incredibly difficult to accept, for society often paints desire as the inevitable path to happiness. But Alexander's story exposes a painful paradox. The more he possessed, the more hollow his heart became. In the scriptures, the Buddha emphasized that craving, tanha, is the root of suffering. Craving here is not only sensual desire, but also the relentless hunger for wealth, power, fame, control, and self-affirmation. It is like a fire that grows stronger the more fuel it consumes, never satisfied. Alexander is living proof, a man who believed he had happiness in his hands, yet was being consumed by the flames of desire burning day and night. What makes desire dangerous is the illusion of happiness it creates. When we achieve a goal, there is a fleeting sense of joy, but that joy quickly fades, leaving behind a new emptiness. People often think, if I just had a little more, I would finally be happy. Yet as soon as they gain that little more, we are only intensifying it. The more Alexander earned, the more possessions he acquired, the emptier his heart became. This is the vicious circle in which most modern people are trapped. Desire not only brings suffering, but also destroys relationships. While Alexander built his business empire, his family crumbled. His children grew distant. His aging parents lost hope. Not only does the body weaken, but everything once dear begins to fade away. Buddhism teaches that desire brings suffering because it imprisons the mind in perpetual lack. When people equate happiness with possession, they live in constant fear of loss. Alexander may have had millions, but he also carried the anxiety of losing it all. The greater the wealth, the greater the fear. He had been running all his life, never once stopping to listen to his own heart. Only then did he glimpse a faint light of truth. Happiness does not come from accumulation, but from letting go. From the metaphor, desire is like salt water. We can draw a profound lesson. To truly quench thirst, we must find fresh water, not drink more from the sea. That fresh water is mindfulness in the present moment, the ability to live fully with what we already have, with gratitude for each breath, each smile. Only then does thirst cease, and happiness reveal itself. Alexander's story is not just a tragedy of one individual, but a mirror reflecting the tragedy of an entire age. An era in which people willingly trade inner peace for hollow illusions, choosing salt water while forgetting it is. The places you travel to, even the brand of coffee you drink to decide who you are. In such an environment, consumption is no longer just about real needs, but about performance. People buy not to use, but to show that they are using. And when others also start flaunting, the spiral of comparison spins faster, fueling new cravings. Just look at social media, the clearest mirror of our age. Every day, millions of pictures are uploaded. Luxury meals, lavish trips, the latest and most expensive items. Everyone tries to pick the best angle, the perfect lighting, so their moment looks shinier than the rest. But behind that glossy surface, many feel weary, insecure, even empty. Because the more we compare, the more we realize we are never enough. And that sense of not enough becomes the seed of anxiety and unhappiness. What's striking is that modern society constantly fuels this spiral. Advertising, media, and even digital platforms are designed to trigger feelings of being left behind. People fear not measuring up to friends, colleagues, neighbors, fear falling behind, fear not being attractive in the eyes of others. That fear becomes the fuel driving them to keep running. But in this race, no one wins. Because even if you are ahead today, tomorrow someone else will overtake you. And so, the race becomes endless. Buddhism offers a different perspective. Instead of chasing comparisons, turn inward. Instead of asking, what do others have? Ask, what truly brings me peace? When someone dares to pause and step out of the spiral, they finally glimpse life's real value. It is not the money in a bank account, nor the number of likes on a post, but the ability to rest in the present moment, to smile even when there is nothing to flaunt. Modern life, with all its convenience and speed, has turned people into tireless consumers. But if we are not mindful, this consumption will consume our very souls. Alexander's story is just one example, yet in truth, within each of us lives an Alexander, always craving, always comparing, always running. Only when we have the courage to stop and face that truth can we truly step out of this endless spiral. Part 3. Returning to the true source of happiness in the Buddha's teachings. Once we see through the illusions of the outer world, a greater question arises. Where does genuine happiness come from? More than 2,000 years ago, the Buddha pointed out that happiness does not lie in what we possess, but in how we live and how we experience each moment. The stories in this palaces, lavish feasts, and the constant praise of courtiers. From childhood, he had been taught that happiness lay in power, wealth, and status. Thus, Viraj grew up convinced that if he became a great ruler, surrounded by gold, beautiful women, and supreme authority, happiness would surely be his. Yet his heart was never at peace. Despite possessing everything others could dream of, Viraj often felt empty. At night, when the music and dancing had faded and the palace grew silent, he would lie alone in his vast chamber, listening to the wind slipping through the windows. In those moments, Viraj realized he was lonely and restless, as though there was a void in his soul that nothing could fill. One day, Viraj decided to leave the palace, disguised as a commoner, to wander the city. He wished to see how ordinary people experienced happiness. But what he witnessed surprised him. A wealthy merchant sat over his ledgers, frowning with worry about losses. A farmer anxiously watched the skies, fearing a failed harvest. A beautiful maiden wept in sorrow over lost love. Whether rich or poor, each carried their own burden of suffering. Viraj was shaken. If happiness resided in wealth or romance, why were these people still unhappy? Confused, Viraj heard word of an enlightened sage teaching nearby, the Buddha himself. Driven by his longing for answers, peasants alike listened in silence and serenity. Viraj approached, his heart filled with unspoken questions. Kneeling, he said, "Revered one, I was taught that happiness lies in power, wealth, and fame. But the more I have, the more restless I become. I see both the rich and the poor suffer. Please tell me, what is true happiness?" The Buddha looked at the prince with knowing eyes and asked, "Prince, when you are thirsty and drink water, do you feel refreshed?" Viraj nodded. "Yes, master." The Buddha continued, "But if you keep drinking without stopping, what happens?" Viraj thought and replied, "I would feel bloated, uncomfortable, even sick." The Buddha nodded. "So it is with wealth, power, and love. They can bring fleeting joy, but if you cling to them as the..." He realized he had been chasing an illusion. All his life, he had been taught to conquer the world outside, but never shown how to look within. The Buddha continued, "True happiness is not found in Buddha's teachings, practiced meditation, and lived more simply." Though still a prince, he no longer took pride in power or possessions. Instead, he cared for the simple joys of the people, sowing seeds of compassion and understanding. Those around him noticed the change, his eyes no longer restless, but radiating calm and kindness. The story of Viraj spread throughout the kingdom, a reminder that true happiness does not depend on where we are born or what we hold, but on our ability to let go and live mindfully. And even today, its lesson echoes all the treasures of the planting and harvesting. From childhood, Ananta was taught by his father that a farmer's happiness lay in abundant harvests, overflowing granaries, and rice jars stacked high in the house. That teaching carved itself deep into his mind as if it were an unshakable truth. When he grew up and inherited his parents' fields, Ananta worked tirelessly. From dawn until dusk he labored, his hands calloused and his back bent under the plow. Yet he held fast to a single belief. If he could secure a great harvest, if his granaries were always full, he would finally know perfect happiness. Each harvest season, when the rice piled high, Ananta's heart leapt with joy like that of a child. But the joy was fleeting. Within days, a new anxiety crept in. Would next year bring enough rain? Would pests devour the crops? Would the granary be sufficient to guard against famine? The happiness Ananta thought he had grasped slipped away like sand through his fingers. The more he possessed, the more restless he became. His gentle wife sometimes sighed as she looked at him. She noticed that he rarely smiled, even in the years of greatest abundance. An enlightened one, for he was certain his happiness depended on rice and grain. Yet the growing unease within him urged him to seek another answer. Under the shade of a solid tree, Ananta saw the Buddha seated in meditation, surrounded by people from all walks of life. A strange stillness pervaded the air, as though all the world's worries had dissolved. When his turn came, Ananta bowed and said, "Blessed one, I am a farmer. My whole life I have labored in the fields, longing for bountiful harvests. I have believed my happiness lies in rice and full granaries. But no matter how much I have, my heart cannot rest. Please, show me where I have gone astray." The Buddha gazed upon him with compassion and asked, "Farmer, if you owned vast fields and harvested double or triple each year, would your worries end?" Ananta bowed his head in thought. In that moment, he realized that even with more, he would still fear losing it. Quietly, he answered, "No, blessed one, they would not." Tears of sorrow, they were tears of release. as if a lifelong burden had been set down. From that day onward, Ananta returned to his fields. He still tilled, planted, and harvested, but his heart no longer wrestled with unrest. He learned contentment, learned to smile at each grain of rice, each drop of rain. His wife and children felt the change too. His gaze softened. Happiness within. People came asking for his secret, and he simply repeated the Buddha's words, "Do not look for happiness in the granary. Look for it in a content heart." The story of Ananta spread throughout the lands by the Ganges, a living testament that happiness is not found in harvests or possessions, but in letting go of worry, cherishing the present, and living with inner peace. And to this very day, his story is remembered as a guiding light, showing people the way out of endless cycles of desire and fear, back to the true source of joy within themselves. 3.3. One moonlit night, he abandoned it all, his wealth, his status, even his family ties, to retreat into the wilderness in search of peace. It was said that Mahadeva lived for many years in a cave high on for liberation. To those who heard of him, Mahadeva seemed to have attained the bliss most people could only dream of. But deep within, a quiet unrest remained. Even after leaving the city behind, bitter rivalries rose unbidden, pulling his mind in turmoil. He wondered, "I have renounced everything. Why is my heart still unsettled? I live in austerity, yet why do I not feel peace?" One day, during a journey of teaching, the Buddha and his disciples passed near the mountains where Mahadeva lived. Villagers guided the hermit to meet him. When Mahadeva came before the Buddha, he was so moved that tears welled in his eyes. Kneeling, he confessed, "Blessed One, I have abandoned all things of the world. I live in the forest, eating little, severing every tie. Yet my heart is not at peace. Why can I not find the serenity I long for?" The Buddha looked upon him with compassion and gently asked, "Hermit, when you gave up wealth and status, did you also give up the cravings within your heart? When you left the palace, did you also leave behind comparison, resentment, and pride in your own austerity?" Mahadeva fell silent. In that, regrets, resentment, and the conviction that self-denial alone was the true path. He had not truly let go. The Buddha continued, "Peace does not come from fleeing the world, nor from tormenting the. Then even in the forest, suffering follows." The Buddha's words struck Mahadeva like thunder in his heart. Suddenly, he saw that all he had done was change his surroundings while his inner self. To observe each craving, each resentment, each thought of comparison as it arose, and to release them with mindfulness. He no longer saw austerity as the ultimate goal, but only as a tool. He began to look deeply into the roots of suffering and found them lodged within his own mind. Over time, Mahadeva was transformed. He was no longer harsh in appearance, but gentle in spirit. Villagers who once saw a stern recluse now found a man with a serene face and eyes shining with deep peace. The story of Mahadeva spread across the mountain lands, a reminder to those who believed. Happiness could be found simply by escaping life. For if the mind is restless, unrest follows everywhere, whether in glittering palaces or in silent forests. And the lesson Mahadeva discovered in the Buddha's words still echoes today. True happiness is not born of rejection, but blossoms from a heart that can let go. Only then can peace become a lasting reality, untouched by the ever-changing world. Part 4. Life stories that reveal the essence of happiness. There are stories that may seem ordinary, yet they touch the deepest corners of the heart because they reflect our most profound longing for happiness. Each character in this section takes a different path. Some chase wealth, others pursue fame, and some are driven by dreams that never seem enough. Yet, through unexpected, bustling port city of Venice in the 16th century, there lived a merchant named Lorenzo. He was renowned throughout the region for his trading skills, immense wealth, and ability to command voyages across distant seas. People often spoke of him as the embodiment of success, his grand mansion, lavish feasts, and highly profitable ventures. Yet, few knew that deep inside, Lorenzo had never truly found peace. He believed serenity would come only with more wealth, more connections, and more power. Then came a fateful night. A violent storm swallowed the ships that carried his most valuable cargo. At the same time, a rival seized the chance to take over his contracts. In just a matter of weeks, the fortune Lorenzo had built over a lifetime slipped through his fingers like sand. He fell from the pinnacle of prosperity to the abyss of ruin, not only losing his possessions, but also the trust of those who once called themselves his friends. Night after night, he sat alone in his. The emptiness within him felt even more unbearable than the loss of his wealth. One evening, while wandering aimlessly along the canals, Lorenzo encountered a Buddhist monk from the East. Lost, but from clinging your heart to what was never truly yours. The words cut through Lorenzo's pride like a blade. Anger flared within him, yet at the same time, he realized he had never heard anything like it. From that night, he began visiting the monk regularly. At first, only to argue, to prove that wealth and power were indeed the sources of happiness. But the more he debated, the weaker his arguments seemed. The monk told him the story of a river, water forever flowing, never clinging to one shape. Happiness, he said, is like that. It does not dwell in possessions or was born to enjoy every glory life could offer. And yet, the older he grew, the more he felt an invisible emptiness creeping into his soul, a yearning that no wine, no music, and no romance could ever fill. Each evening, as violins played in candlelit halls, Etienne would quietly gaze out the window, where the poor huddled together in the cold. They had nothing but scraps of bread and threadbare coats, yet they somehow smiled genuinely at one another. Meanwhile, within the glittering palaces, he saw only forced smiles, hollow words, and hearts constantly guarded. At 25, Etienne made a decision that shocked his family and the noble class. He renounced his title, sold nearly all his possessions, and kept only a few plain garments. Amid ridicule, anger, and disbelief, he donned a coarse brown robe and entered a monastery in the mountains. Life was harsh at first. From one who had dined on delicacies, he now survived on bread and vegetable broth. From nights of endless dancing, he now rose at 4 each morning to chant and work the fields. Hands once accustomed to holding quills and lifting wine goblets grew calloused from digging soil. And yet, instead of suffering, Etienne found his heart lightening with each passing day. One autumn morning, while sweeping leaves in the monastery courtyard, he heard a bird's song above. For the first time in his life, he felt complete serenity in every breath, in each dewdrop shimmering on the leaves. He smiled, a smile that needed no witness, no approval. In that moment, Etienne understood. Happiness had never resided in the glittering palaces, but had always been waiting within, revealed through letting go. Years later, Etienne became a respected monk in that mountain monastery. Villagers often came seeking his guidance on inner peace. He never condemned wealth or denied material joys, but he always reminded them, if the heart is chained by desire, then even in a palace, one lives in prison. But if the heart is free, then even in a humble monastery, one dwells in paradise. The story of Etienne de Clermont spread far and wide, inspiring countless souls lost beneath the glare of worldly lights. And to this day, he is remembered as a living testament to a timeless truth. True happiness is not found in what we possess, but in what we can release. As we return to the quiet peace of the heart. 4.3. Letting go of the outer to gain the inner. Reflections from 2 stories. The 2 stories of Lorenzo, a wealthy merchant in Venice, and Etienne, a fame and dazzling luxury. But in the end, it was only when one lost everything and the other willingly gave everything up that they both touched the quiet peace within. This is the very essence of the Buddhist teaching. Happiness does not come from gathering what lies outside, but from the clarity, stillness, and freedom of the heart. The Buddha once said, "The one who knows contentment is the." Etienne, though not struck by tragedy, the emptiness amid splendor led him to realize another truth. A palace can still be a prison if the mind is trapped in endless craving. Buddhism teaches that all suffering arises from greed, hatred, and delusion, the 3 roots of ignorance. Greed drives us to chase desires without end. Hatred fills us with anger when desires are not met. Delusion blinds us to the impermanence of all things. Lorenzo embodied greed. He believed more wealth would mean more happiness. Etienne embodied delusion. He thought high status and glittering lights could replace inner peace. Yet when one was forced to let go and the other chose to let go, they both discovered the same truth. Only by giving up the outer can one gain the inner. Do not let the heart become enslaved to them. A merchant can still trade, a noble can still live in a palace. But if happiness depends solely on wealth or rank, then when those vanish, life collapses. Conversely, if the heart remains free, then no matter how circumstances shift, happiness will not abandon them. In Buddhist teaching, there is the concept of santuthi, contentment. The contented person is free from the whirlpool of craving. When Etienne smiled at the song of birds and the sparkle of dew, he touched contentment. When Lorenzo sat quietly by the canal, no longer clinging to loss, he too entered contentment. And in that space, both found something they had never truly known before: peace. We often think letting go means losing. Yet from these two, all are like bubbles drifting on a stream. Only wisdom and a tranquil heart are treasures that cannot be lost. To understand this is to place happiness where it belongs, not outside, but within. Looking at modern society, the lessons of Lorenzo and Etienne remain vividly relevant. How many today are like Lorenzo, striving in business, hoarding wealth, chasing reputation, only to collapse? About letting light. Not about possessing, but about resting in being. When we truly grasp this, we stop chasing illusions outside, and we learn to come home, to realize happiness has never left us, but has always been waiting for us to sit still and see. Part 5. Happiness in the simple moments of life. Happiness does not always come from grand events or resounding achievements. Sometimes, it quietly slips into the smallest details of daily life. A family meal shared together, the morning sunlight streaming through a window, or an unexpected embrace from a loved one. It is in these seemingly ordinary moments that we begin to realize true happiness is never far away. It is already here, woven into every breath of our everyday existence. 5.1 The darkness and the. Her husband left her when Oliver was only 2 years old. From that point, all burdens fell upon her shoulders: rent, utilities, school fees, living expenses, and the scrutinizing gazes of neighbors and relatives. On cold winter nights, when the wind whistled through the windows, Amelia would sit alone in the corner of the kitchen, hiding her face as tears fell. She felt small in a vast world, lost like a wounded bird in a gray sky. There were times she even thought of giving up everything just to escape the exhausting cycle. Yet, whenever Oliver ran up, his little arms wrapping around her, all the darkness in her heart seemed to vanish. In that moment, she realized she still had a reason to continue. But could a single reason illuminate the long path ahead? One day, she still had her son, her health, her hands to work, her heart capable of love. Above all, she still had the opportunity to make life meaningful. From that day on, Amelia began anew. Whenever bills arrived, but instead of resentment, she looked at life differently. She saw difficulties no longer as burdens, but as opportunities to cultivate resilience. She understood that happiness was not found in distant things, but present in every breath, every simple moment, every shared smile. Once asked about her dreams, Amelia no longer said, "I wish for a more prosperous life." Instead, she smiled, "I just hope that each day I wake up, I still feel gratitude for having my son by my side." Amelia's story moved many in the community. They saw in her a reflection of themselves, people endlessly seeking happiness on distant horizons, in wealth, fame, or lost things, forgetting that sometimes happiness is simply the moment of gratitude in the present. From a Buddhist perspective, Amelia underwent a profound transformation. She moved from a life weighed down by suffering to one where she could reflect and recognize the value of what she already. She did not rush out of bed but took a few minutes to feel her body, her breath, and her heartbeat. For Hannah, mornings were not just the start of a busy day, but a small ritual to connect with herself. She drank each sip of water mindfully, felt its coolness travel down her throat, took deep breaths into her lungs, and observed her thoughts as they passed without clinging to them. At the tea house, Hannah practiced mindfulness in every small action. From arranging the tea tray, pouring hot water into the teapot, to serving tea to customers, every motion was done with full awareness. Her hands moved deliberately, her eyes focused on every detail, and her heart filled with gratitude. To Hannah, no action was too small or meaningless because every moment was in. But her eyes reflected a whole world, a world where every second is precious, where the mind is not swept away by the past or anxious about the future. Daily life is often full of worries, emails, savored flavors, aromas, and gave thanks for the origin of each ingredient. Every meal became a ritual of life, connecting her with everything around her. The Buddhist concept of sati, mindfulness. Watching the maple leaves fall, she felt complete and peaceful, not empty or lonely. The small things, a cup of tea, a candle, a flower, became doorways into a deep inner world where happiness came from being fully present with what is, not from external circumstances. Hannah shared this way of living with coworkers and regular customers. She taught them to take deep breaths before starting work, to observe their hands when holding a teapot, to notice sounds, light, and scents around them. Gradually, the people in the tea house changed. They came not just to drink tea, but to learn how to slow moment. When practicing mindfulness, everything we do gains significance, and the mind is nourished by continuous peace, regardless of the world outside. In modern society, where life moves quickly, the path to peace, allowing happiness to arise naturally rather than being something we must chase. These small actions, pouring tea, tidying, slowly chewing a bite, taking deep breaths, become a modern life. People are often swept along by the fast flow of time, constantly thinking about the past that has passed or worrying about a future that has not yet arrived. We easily miss the precious moments unfolding right before our eyes, moments that could bring true happiness if we were aware and mindful of them. Buddhism, dating back thousands of years, has pointed out that the key to inner present in Buddhism is not just a simple reminder, but a profound practice that helps humans break free from the cycle of desire, anger, and ignorance, the root causes of suffering. When the mind dwells in the past, people are prone to regret, resentment, or longing for what is lost. When the mind is always focused on the future, anxiety and fear take over, and the value of even the smallest actions, eating, walking, sitting, standing, even washing dishes or cleaning, become opportunities to fully experience life. Buddhism emphasizes that happiness is not found in distant material possessions, but can be discovered in the present moment when one is aware and appreciative. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha teaches, people wander in the past and future, and thus forget the present, where true happiness resides. These words highlight that without awareness and recognition of the present, we will endlessly search for happiness outside. Freedom. Another important point is understanding impermanence, anicca. Everything in life is constantly changing. Joy, sorrow, success or failure, health or illness. When one understands and living in the present, a person eating a family meal with full awareness can savor the flavors of the food, feel the warmth of loved ones, and appreciate the moment. An employee fully engaged in each task finds joy in the work itself rather than constantly dreaming of higher pay or status. These seemingly simple moments, when lived fully, become a continuous source of happiness independent of external circumstances. Living in the present also reduces suffering and stress. When people cling to the past or worry about the future, the mind remains restless, fatigued, and pressured. Fills the mind with peace. Combined with mindfulness and awareness of impermanence, living in the present becomes an art. The art of finding happiness in every moment, despite life's uncertainties. In conclusion, living in the present according to Buddhism is not merely a philosophical concept, but a practical way of life that allows people to recognize inner happiness here and now. By practicing mindfulness, observing the mind, and understanding impermanence, we learn to appreciate each moment, release attachments, and naturally experience deep, lasting, and profound happiness. There is a strange paradox in our modern world. The more choices we have, the more empty we seem to feel. Supermarkets overflow with goods, social media dazzles us with images of luxury vacations, fine dining, and elegant homes. Yet when night falls, countless people lie awake, restless, unsettled, and unable to name the source of their unease. There are mornings when you wake up, look into the mirror, and quietly wonder, I already have so much, so why don't I feel happy? It's a question that echoes silently in many hearts, though few dare to speak it aloud. Society has taught us that success and happiness should always go hand in hand. But reality often tells another story. A wealthy businessman in New York, fresh from signing a multi-million-dollar deal, drives his luxury car down Fifth Avenue, yet spends his evenings in therapy, battling depression. In a small village in India, a farmer with calloused hands and a humble home laughs heartily. World applauds or turns away. It is an inner state, a quiet current of being, revealed only when we are deeply connected to ourselves. And yet, why is this truth so elusive? Because we are easily deceived by illusions. We tell ourselves that happiness will arrive when we own more, climb higher, reach farther. We imagine that if our suffering disappears, happiness will naturally appear. But the Buddha's timeless words remind us, happiness is not the absence of suffering. It is the understanding of suffering and the freedom that arises.